finish up our studies in the classroom. You now, if you have any questions, you can always email me afterwards. I'll try to respond in a prompt fashion. What we're going to do with this review is to first go over the review sheet of the terms that I gave out. If you need a review sheet, you can email me a review sheet if you didn't have one for whatever reason. And afterwards, I will also go through the Sfiras Omer packet. I don't think this should take us too long. And again, I am available and happy to answer any questions you may have in advance of the review. Okay, I will also, Mir Tashem, be in school on June 5th. So if you have any questions, you can ask me then. On the review sheet, there are a number of terms. So let's just go through them nice and slowly, but you don't have to know them terribly in depth. You have to know the material, but you don't have to be anxious. I'm going to ask you a very, very, very detailed dimension of the particular topic. We talked about the fact that in the year 70 CE, the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Significant because at that point we lost a central location where we were able to go to learn Torah, and that threatened the life of Torah Sheba'al Peh, because once no longer centralized, we began unfortunately to lose the Torah Sheba'al Peh. The Torah Sheba'al Peh had been oral for thousands of years, since the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi ultimately felt in the year 220, around the year 220, he would not write down the Torah Sheba'al Peh, chas v'shalom, it would be forgotten. So Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi is the editor of the Mishnah. Every single teaching in the Mishnah, he edited the Mishnah. And by doing so, he guaranteed that the Torah would not be forgotten. One could ask, how was Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi allowed to write down the Torah? So he's not Sheba'al Peh. So the answer, as we discussed in class, is a concept called Eis Lasos Lashem Efaru Torasecha. That it is a time to act for God, because the Torah is, God forbid, becoming null. It's being challenged, and because the Torah is being challenged, you're allowed to do things in a b'diavad sort of way, in a less than ideal way, in order to safeguard the Torah overall. So Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi wrote down the Mishnah, and that is ultimately the very first text we have for Torah Sheba'al Peh. We talked about in class, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi could not include everything in the Mishnah, and the extra teachings that were around ultimately became the Tosefta, which we also call a Brisa. So we have the Mishnah, which was edited by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. The extra teachings of the rabbis of the Mishnah, who we call Tanaim, those extra teachings ultimately became part of the Tosefta. What did Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi write down? So he wrote down the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, the 6 orders of the Mishnah, and you have to know each and every one of them. We know the first Seder is called Zra'im, deals with agricultural issues. Then Moed deals with the holidays. Nashim deals with the laws of marriage and divorce. Nezikin deals with damages. Kodshim deals with the laws of sacrifices, and Taros deals with the laws of purity and impurity. We call that Zman Nakat. That's the acronym that we use, and those are the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. We talked about the fact that each one of the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah can be broken down further into Masechtas. So for example, Seder Moed can be broken down into Maseches Shabbos, Maseches Yud, Maseches Eruvin, and each of those Masechtos are broken down further into Prakim, and each of those Prakim are broken down into Mishnayos, Mishnah Aleph, Mishnah Beis, Mishnah Gimel, and you need to be familiar with that breakdown. So you have to know there's the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, Each Seder has many Masechtos, each Masechet has many Prakim, and each Perek has many Mishnayos. If you are a rabbi and your name is mentioned in the Mishnah, that means you are a Tana. If you are a rabbi and your name is mentioned in the Gemara, that means you are an Amora. You are a rabbi of the Talmud. You came later. When exactly did you come? So the Yerushalmi was finished around the year 400, give or take, and the Bavli was finished around the year 500, give or take. We talked about the fact that Ravina and Rav Ashi get the credit for being the editors of the Mishnah, and we discussed the fact that you're not responsible to know who is the editor of the Yerushalmi. So, sorry, I misspoke. Ravina and Rav Ashi were the editors of the Gemara Bavli. We didn't discuss who the editors were for the Yerushalmi. You'll also need to know the Tsuras Hadaf, which means I'm going to give you a little picture of a random Gemara, and I'm going to ask you to please provide for me the name of the Gemara, the number Perek of the Gemara, and also the name of that Perek in addition to the Daf. Remember, if there is one dot by the Daf, that means it's Amud Aleph. If there are two dots by the Daf, that means it is Amud Beis. That's what I mean on the review sheet when I write Surah Sadaf. So far, girls, we just discussed a number of different of the issues. The first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The first 8 terms on the review sheet were just discussed. Let's move on now to the Mishnah Torah and Sefer HaMitzvos. We talked about the fact that the Rambam wrote Mishnah Torah. He went through the Gemara and gave us his version of what the bottom line halacha is. That's included in Mishnah Torah. The Mishnah Torah has 14 different books. That's why the nickname for Mishnah Torah is Yad HaChazakah. The word Yad, the gematria is 14. The 14 different books of the Mishnah Torah. The Rambam also wrote Sefer HaMitzvos. In the Sefer HaMitzvos, the Rambam counted all 613 of the mitzvos. How do we know there are 613 mitzvos? Where does the 613 mitzvos come from? So we talked about in class that there's a pasuk that reads, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. Girls, I'm smiling because I see a couple of you got wind of the fact that I'm speaking now online, and I see that you're signing up. I am sorry that I don't see how to access the chat. Oh, okay, I do see a chat. So if you have any questions and you'd like to enter it into the chat box, feel free to do so. Hi, everyone. Hey, that's me. Girls, we're talking about the 613 mitzvos that the Rambam includes in the Sefer HaMitzvos. Where do the concept of 613 come from? So we talked about in class, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. The gematria of Torah is, who can tell me in the chat box, what's Torah? What's the gematria of Torah? Anybody? Okay, it's 611. So Torah, 611 mitzvos, Tziva Lanu Moshe, were given to us by, and we know that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us 2 mitzvos himself, quote unquote. So that's how we get to 613 mitzvos. Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, 611, and then the 2 that Hashem gave us directly brings us to 613. Writes a book called Sefer HaMitzvos, and in the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvos, he counts 613 mitzvos. Remember, we discussed the fact that if the Ramban, let's say, disagrees with one of the mitzvos that the Rambam included, so the Ramban might say, I'm going to take that one off the list. But if he takes it off the list, what does the Ramban need to do? the next step, he has to add another one on the list. Remember, we talked about this. The Ramban does not think it is a mitzvah to daven every day. That's not a mitzvah d'oraisa, that's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. So the Ramban takes it off the list. But if the Ramban takes, he must add on a different mitzvah. So the Ramban, for example, writes that there's a mitzvah to live in Israel. He counts that on his list, and it's not on the Rambam's list. So I'm just giving you an example of of the types of things you would read about in the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvot. Girls, if I could just ask that anybody that's on the video conference right now, if you could send it out in the class WhatsApp, not for your particular class, but if there's like a 9th grade class WhatsApp, you could let girls know that I'm talking, but don't worry, it's being recorded. So if you're missing it now, you can listen to it at your leisure a little bit later on. Okay. What about the term nosei kelim? The term nosei kelim refers to the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch and on the Rambam. The term could also refer to commentaries on other works, but these are the term nosei kelim is most often used speaking about the commentaries that comment on the Rambam and comment on the Shulchan Aruch. The next part on the list is Dalid Chelkei Shulchan Aruch. Girls, this is an important one. Dalid Chelkei Shulchan Aruch means the 4 parts of Shulchan Aruch. Let's first. Anybody in the comment section? Who's going to tell me, girls? Who wrote the Shulchan Aruch? I'm waiting. Somebody. Girls. Who wrote the Shulchan Aruch? Okay. Rav Yosef Karo wrote the Shulchan Aruch. Rav Yosef Karo wrote the Shulchan Aruch. And he included the general practices, in particular amongst the Sephardic customs. Who came along and added the Ashkenazic customs? So that would be Rav Moshe Isserlis, right? Remember we discussed this in great detail in class, ladies, that when you open up a page of Shulchan Aruch, you will find you have the inside, you have the Piskei Halacha of Rav Yosef Karo, and you also have the halacha of Rav Moshe Isserlis, which is sometimes called the mapa, which is a play on words, right? Because Shulchan Aruch means a set table. The halacha was placed before us like a very nicely set table. And the Ramah is called the mapa, which means the tablecloth, which is like the additional part that's being added. So the Rav Yosef Karo wrote the Shulchan Aruch. The Rav Moshe Isserlis, the Ramah, added the Ashkenazic customs to it. Rav Yosef Karo broke his work down into 4 different sections. He wrote Orach Chaim. Remember, ladies, it's not Or HaChaim. Or HaChaim is Rav Chaim Ibn At commentary on the Torah much later on. That's not who it is. This is the Orach with a ches at the end, Orach Chaim. That deals with daily, monthly, yearly laws, the laws of a Shabbos, the laws of Tefillah, the laws of Brachos. Those are all included in Orach Chaim. The next part of Shulchan Aruch is Yoredeya, sometimes called Isser V'Heder, which means it deals with things which are prohibited and permitted. I'd like you to know that Hilchos Kashrus is in Yoredeya. That's an important thing you should be familiar with. We also discussed that Rav Yosef Karo wrote Choshen Mishpat, which deals with monetary laws. And lastly, Even Ha'ezer deals with laws related to marriage and divorce and other related laws. So those are the 4 chalakim of Shulchan Aruch. You'll need to know really what I might ask you a question such as, if I'm looking for a halacha regarding who owes who money, Which chilek of Shulchan Aruch would I look at? So what's the answer? Anyone want to take a stab at it in the group chat section? What's the answer? The answer? Come on, ladies, right there. What would be the answer if I was looking for a question regarding Choshen Mishpat? Okay, if I was looking for Chos Kashrus, Yeridea, Chos Shabbos, Chos Filos, or Achayim. Those are the four Chelkei Shulchan Aruch. We noted that although there are many different Nosei Kelim on all of the Chalakim of Shulchan Aruch, you will only find the Mishnah Brura's commentary on which Chelek? You will only find it on the Chelek of Orach Chaim. Who is the Mishnah Brura? The Mishnah Brura is Rav Yisrael Meir Kagan HaKohen. He wrote the Mishnah Brura, he wrote the Biur Halacha, and he wrote the Sharat Zion. The Mishnah Brura is the running commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. The Biur Halacha is like in-depth analysis on the Shulchan Aruch. And the Sharat Zion is the footnotes of the Mishnah Brura where he gives you his sources. You'll need to know all of that for the final. So that sort of concludes the first part of the review sheet in terms of personalities that you need to be aware of. Okay, are there any questions on this particular part before I move on to some concepts that we discussed over the course of the year? What I like to call, you made fun of me for that, but that stands for absolutely need to know. Any questions before we go? Girls, if you're watching this after I finish broadcasting live, you can email me and I'll try to respond in a timely fashion. Any questions? Okay, so let's move on. Some of the topics that you'll need to be familiar with. The word asmachta. So asmachta refers to a concept of a din d'Rabbanan, which means the rabbis instituted it, but they found a hint in the words of the Torah. They found a hint in Tanakh. That means something is an asmachta. We talked about that in the beginning of the year regarding the month of Elul, right? I think the Mishnah Brura says the asmachta, the hint for Elul is ani ledodi v'dodi li. That's an asmachta. The concept of tefillah, the Ramban says, it is an asmachta, even though the Torah tells us, Ula avdo b'chol v'avchem, we have to worship Hashem with all of our heart. That wasn't the Torah directly telling us we have to daven, it was an asmachta. I'm not going to ask you to repeat these examples to me. As I go through the rest of the sheet, if I bring up an example, I'm just bringing it up to help you recall when we talked about it, to ask you on the final for you to tell me, where did this come up? Unless I explicitly tell you. Okay, Rishus and Chova. The word Rishus means it is something that's optional. Chova means it's something that is obligatory, something you must do. The phrase Toch Kidei Dibor means if you catch yourself after you've said something, within the amount of time that it takes to say, Shalom Aleichem Rabbi. If you catch yourself within that time, you're still good and you can go back. It's like the halachic delete button. The concept of a chazaka means an assumption. We assume that whatever it is that you were doing, you're going to keep on doing. So for example, remember, you're supposed to change to Hamelach HaKadosh during the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, but let's say you forget let's say you're not sure what you said. So there's a certain chazaka, there's a certain assumption that you did not say the correct words, because we assume that you said what you're always used to saying. That's the concept of chazaka. Lechachila and b'diavad are very important words. Lechachila means the ideal way of doing something, like Tichila in the beginning. If you would come to the rabbi and he would ask you a particular, if he would ask you, you would ask him rather how to do a particular halacha, Techila, in the beginning, he would tell you this is how you should do it. This is how you should do the following mitzvah. Bidi eved means once it is already done. Let's say once milk already spills into the chicken soup, bidi avad, it's already done. Okay, so how should you go about dealing with this chicken soup? That's something you have to ask your rabbi, but it's already after the fact. So again, those are two important ideas. Lechachila means the ideal way of doing something. B'di'avad means the far less than ideal way of doing something. Very important terms. We talked about ad bichlal, the ad lo bichlal. Whether or not when we give a time or a span, does it include the number at the end or not? Remember, we talked about I forget exactly. I have to think about that. But it means, do you count the last number or not? So let's say if I say you have to sit in the sukkah for 8 days, is that including the 8th day or is that up to the 8th day? So vi'ad bichlal means that you include the number at the end as part of the halacha. It's not excluded. Vi'ad lo bichlal means that you don't count the number at the end. We talked about safek deoraisa. If a person is not sure if they fulfilled a mitzvah deoraisa, so then they have to do the mitzvah again. Or another way of saying that is safek deoraisa lechumra. We're stringent about a mitzvah. We would make you do it again. Safek derabanan means if you're not sure about a rabbinic matter, so the halacha is safek derabanan lekula, that we are lenient about rabbinic matters. If it's a din derabanan, we're generally lenient. We take the easier, softer approach. If it's a din d'oraisa, we take the stronger, more stringent approach. Very important concepts, girls. Mikra'i Kodesh, we talked about the fact that Torah tells us on our holidays, it's a time to gather. Mikra'i Kodesh, which the Ramban says it's a time to call out through tefillah. It's a time to call out through tefillah on a d'oraisa level, which, remember, girls, we said that according to the Ramban, one of the exceptions to the rule, when tefillah is a din d'oraisa, is on Shabbos, or certainly on Yom Tov, based on the verse Mikra'ei Kodesh. The Sefer HaChinuch, we talked about the fact that the Sefer HaChinuch is another book that counts the mitzvos. But in addition to counting mitzvah, he provides the shoresh ha-mitzvah, the essence of the mitzvah. Doesn't mean that's the only reason why we do a mitzvah, but he always provides the essence or some sort of reasoning for the mitzvah. We talked about that in terms of Sfiras Omer and the importance of combining Pesach and Shavuos. The last three terms are terms that you'll hear about, Hashem, for many years to come when it comes to davening, for example, doing mitzvahs during the day. Netz Hachama means when the Netz Hachama means when the sun begins to shine. We can see the rays of the sun. On the sheet, there should have been Amud HaShachar. Amud HaShachar means dawn. So Amud HaShachar is the earliest part of the morning. Netz Hachama means when the sun can already be seen, the rays of the sun can be seen above the mountains. Those are the earlier zmanim in the day. And in the evening time, Netz Hachama is when the sun goes down, but it's still light out, right? The sun goes behind or below the horizon. It's still light in the sky a little bit. And Seis HaChavim, the stars go fully out and you can't see anything at all. That is halachic nighttime. Okay, girls, it's really not a very long list. Comprehensive, but it's not a very long list, so you'll have to be familiar with those terms in addition to the packet of Sfiras Omer. Are there any questions before I just quickly review the Sfiras Omer packet that we did? Any questions? You can enter them now in the chat on the right side. Any questions? No questions? Okay. So now we'll move on the Spiras HaOmer review. I'm using now the source sheet that I gave out in class. I'm happy to send it to anybody if they need. You can let me know. In source number 1, we talked about the fact that the Torah tells us that we are to offer a korban omer the macharas hashabbos. It's on that day that we offer the korban omer. The korban omer is made of barley, and that is offered in the Beis Hamikdash during the day. I think we mentioned in class that the people would go out and cut the barley at night, the night of Tet Zayin, and then during the day, they would offer it in the Beis Hamikdash, they would wave it in the Beis Hamikdash, and that was the Korban Omer, followed by counting of 7 full weeks, Sheva, Shabbosos, Tamimos, Tihyana. So it also tells us to count 50 days, Tisperu Chamishin Yom, and on the 50th day, we offer the new korban to Hashem. That korban is made up of wheat. What's the significance of Sefer Chinuch in his explanation of the rationale for the mitzvah? The Sefer Chinuch says that the whole point of our from Egypt was not simply to play tennis and to twiddle our thumbs, but it was in order to accept the Torah, to live an elevated, holy lifestyle. So by telling us to count from the moment we leave Mitzrayim until Kabbalas HaTorah, the Torah is clearly connecting for us our physical freedom and our spiritual freedom. Why do we count? Because the Sefer Chinuch says counting shows our excitement and our passion. When you're excited, count to it because you're so excited about what's on the horizon, what's going to be coming. Why don't we count down as opposed to what we do, which is counting up? We should count down. 10, 9, 8. And the answer is because if we would start with 49, it'd be like, oh my goodness, so many days to go. We'd be like depressed. Oh my gosh, this is so much we have to do. It's already, we don't want to depress anybody. So we count up in the sense that's like, okay, 1. We've got it. We're doing it. And that gives us chizuk and that makes us more excited. We mentioned in class that this in general believes acharei ha'pu'ulos nimshachim halavavos, that our heart is swayed, is drawn after action. So by counting, by actively counting, we are showing our tremendous excitement and we get ourselves even more excited about the upcoming holiday of Kabbalas HaTorah. What should we be doing in terms of counting the Omer? So in source number 3, a very important Gemara that lists the machlokas between Abaye and Rav Ashi on the one hand, and Amemar on the other hand. Abaye says we should count the days and the weeks. Same thing with Rav Ashi. And Amemar says, no, we just count the days, not the weeks. So the question is, what exactly are they arguing about? We offer 2 different explanations. We said that Abaye might say that the mitzvah of Siyas Omer is a mitzvah d'oraisa bizman hazeh, and Amemar says, no, it's only d'Rabbanan. Why is it only d'Rabbanan? So we saw in Rashi. Rashi explains because nowadays, when we can't offer the Korban Omer anymore, the whole mitzvah is really not relevant on a d'oraisa, and everything drops down to a din d'Rabbanan. That's the way Rashi explains it according to Amemar. So when Abaye and Amemar are arguing, what are they arguing about? So suggestion number 1 is they're arguing, is it a d'oraisa or d'Rabbanan? Abaye says it's a d'oraisa, and Amemar says it's a d'Rabbanan. Understands that the mitzvah is still d'oraisa bizman hazeh. That Amemar says the mitzvah of Omer is a din d'oraisa. And Abaye says it's a mitzvah d'oraisa, and Amemar says no, it's only a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Okay, we all skipped source number 6. No matter what class you're in, we skipped source number 6. But again, that was a discussion regarding how should we be performing the mitzvah nowadays? Is it a mitzvah d'oraisa or is it a mitzvah d'Rabbanan? Then we saw in source number 7 and source number 8 a machlokas between the Bahag and the Ri. What happens if a person forgets to count a full 24-hour period? The Bahag says you're out, you're done. And Tosa says it doesn't make any sense. So what are they arguing about? So we saw, this is based on the language of the Rush, that perhaps they're arguing about what is the nature of Sfiras Omer. According to the Bahag, it's one big mitzvah. And once you miss one link in the chain, the whole thing goes kaput, it's over. And according to the Tosfos, no, that's not true. It's 49 individual mitzvos. And if you miss one, it's not a big deal. You can not make up, but you can continue counting the others, because each day is independent of the previous day. How does the Shulchan Aruch paskin? So we saw the Shulchan Aruch says if you forget for a full 24 hours, keep on counting without a bracha. And then Mishnah Bruriah explains you have to keep on counting because maybe on the other hand, you don't make a bracha out of deference, out of respect for the Bahag. Maybe he's right, and maybe you're not allowed to make a bracha anymore because for you, unfortunately, the mitzvah is over. What about the fact that, what about the question regarding mitzvah saseh shazman grama? So I know we didn't discuss this in every class, so if this is not part of a discussion that's relevant for you, you can feel free to stop listening at this point. If you want to keep on listening, that's good too. Are women obligated in Sfiras Omer? So we saw that the Gemara lists certain mitzvot saseh shazman grama, such as sukkah, lulav, and shofar, tzitzis, and tefillin. And it also lists mitzvot saseh shelo azman grama, like mezuzah, makeh, which is the mitzvah to make a fence, aveda, the mitzvah to return lost objects, and shiluach hakein, sending away the mother bird. The Rambam clearly assumes that Sfiras Omer is a mitzvah saseh shehazman grama, which is why women are exempt. But in the Ramban includes Sfiras Omer as a mitzvah saseh shehazman lo grama, that is not time bound. 1 second, how can the Ramban say that Sfiras Omer is not a time bound mitzvah? So we saw a number of different approaches. The Divrei Malkiel says that it's a mistake, ta'us sofer. Really, the language was mem tes ayin, which means matnos aniyim, or samechei ayin, meaning seder ha'avoda. And somehow it got mixed up, and in the Ramban it reads Sfiras Omer, but that was never the Ramban's intention. We saw in the Sridei Eish, the Sridei Eish says that this mitzvah is very different from other mitzvahs. This mitzvah, you see, with other mitzvahs, saseh shazman grama, the mitzvah exists within the time. Like you have to eat matzah on the night of the 15th. The 15th is the parameter of the mitzvah. Sfiras Omer is different because it defines the parameters. It's telling you when does the mitzvah Sfiras Omer exist. You're counting the time. It's not a mitzvah you're doing within time, but you're counting the time. And because you're counting the time, it's not really a classic mitzvah saseh shehazman grama. We'll consider it to be a mitzvah saseh lo hazman grama, and women are obligated. Lastly, we saw the Avnei Nezer, who suggests that this mitzvah is different because all the other mitzvahs saseh shehazman grama, they're triggered by a specific time on the calendar. The 15th of Nisan makes you eat matzah. The 15th of Tishrei makes you commanded to sit in the sukkah. But this mitzvah is triggered by the previous day, mimacharas hashabas, the previous day. It's not triggered by the day itself. And since it's not triggered by the day itself, you are a woman. It's considered a mitzvah saseh shel hazman grama, and women are exempt. Lamaisa, we noted that the mainstream opinion is that women do not have a mitzvah to count Sfiras Omer, but the Magen Avraham 18 says, Kvar shavua aleh chuva, women already took it upon themselves as an obligation. The Minchas Chinuch thinks this does not make any sense. He says this is different from Ma'ariv. Men took upon themselves to daven Ma'ariv because there is a shita that says that Ma'ariv is a chuva. So men decided to take upon themselves a stringency and daven Ma'ariv treated like it's a chuva. But nobody says that women have an obligation to count the Omer. We're not considering the Ramban for a moment. By and large, nobody thinks that there's an obligation to count the Omer for women. So the whole concept of Kvar shavua aleh kechova doesn't really make so much sense. The Mishnah Bruriah, for example, says that He does not think that that's the common custom, certainly not in his locale. And in fact, he says that women who do count the Omer should not make a bracha because it's very likely they are going to not make it to the end. And we lastly finish with the Aruch HaShulchan, who says that clearly women do make a bracha on Sfiras Omer, and that's the custom in his locale. So everybody can make their own decisions on that one. But if a person thinks that they can do it, it seems to me that the common but try your very best to make it until the very end. So if you made it till tonight, counting the Omer, it means you made it. Okay, girls, I know I went a little bit fast at the end. That's because for at least 2 of the classes, we did not get to these last few sources. Just check back your notes to see which material you need to know depending on the class that you're in. As I said, girls, I'm very happy to answer any questions via email. And I wish everybody a Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Have a good Yantif. I'll just pause right now. If anybody wants to add in any questions in the group chat, you can do so, or else I'm going to stop the broadcast. Okay, doesn't seem like. So that's all for now. Have a good Yantif, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.